If I may request all the panelists and the chairperson to take their positions. And I'd also like to introduce the chair and the panelist for this session. Dr. Tara Karta has spent 17 years at the National Security Council Secretariat, which sits at the apex of India's national security architecture. At the NSCS, she's worked on terrorism and other security issues relating to the neighborhood and held special charge of the National Security Advisory Board, among other responsibilities. Shri Dinesh Trivedi ji is an Indian politician, parliamentarian. He was a member of parliament in Rajya Sabha from West Bengal and a former member of parliament Lok Sabha. He was vice chairman Rajya Sabha. He has served as Union Minister for Railways and the former Union Minister of State for Health and Family Welfare. He was also the recipient of Outstanding Parliamentarian Award. Mr. J.R.K. Rao is with us, who's part of the Indian Administrative Services, the 1985 batch. He served in various capacities in the Government of India and state governments of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Andhra Pradesh prior to being appointed CEO of NISG. We also have, Lieutenant General Subrata Saha. He's currently member of the National Security Advisory Board. Lieutenant General Saha retired as Deputy Chief of Army Staff. He created the Army Design Bureau in 2016. Alongside, we have Ambassador Gurjit Singh, who is a former ambassador of India to Germany, Indonesia, Ethiopia, and the African Union. He chaired the CII Business Task Force on trilateral cooperation in Africa, including the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor with Japan. His report on such cooperation in 2019 focused on private sector engagement to make trilaterals successful. He's an independent director of companies achieving social impact and also associated with civil society efforts, including the Advisory Council of Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyarthi. With that, I should like to pass on to the chair of today's session, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, as you just heard, this panel is extremely lucky. We have such a varied group of people from such different walks, of life. You have someone from parliament, you've got someone from defense production, you have a diplomat, you have a general who also stood for election. I mean, this is amazing. He's been in uniform for how many years now? 40 years, went on to nearly win an election, mind you. Okay, and I really think that is courageous. You've got Ambassador Gurjit Singh, who's written, I think 4 or 5 books, if I'm not mistaken. The last one is very, very interestingly titled The Harambe Factor. I thought it was a murder mystery, but it was not. So, our title is National Security in Democratic Polity, which is very high, which sounds very, high funda kind of thing. Let's get down to one basic thing. Nobody knows what national security is. No, I've been in the National Security Council for so many years. No one has ever defined for me what is national security. I went around asking, kya hota hai ye national security? No one told me. No, but that is as a joke, okay? The point is, it's whether you've seen this debate in the newspapers, on TV. We don't have a national security strategy. We don't have a national security, principles and all those things which, the question is, do we need one? Remember, transparency brings its own problems. It's only a powerful country like the US who can afford to put out a national security strategy and say, so I will sort out China. Can you do that? I don't know, honestly speaking. So if the problem is not so much that there is a national security strategy which is public, the point is, how do we then prioritize? Within governments, so these are all people who have been within governments. When you're told, do X something, how does it fit into your prioritization? That is when national security comes in. Because we as a small country have limited resources. You can't give it everywhere at once. For example, I'm going to go straight into questions because my job is to keep shut and make other people talk. So can I start perhaps with Ms. Oh, okay. Okay, General Saha. In terms of I was told to concentrate on your military side more because that you really, I mean, you've shone everywhere, but then that's some place we need to know. How did you find, did this lacunae affect decision making when you were at the senior levels? Okay, and I will, sorry.
Yeah, can you repeat the first part of your question, like what affected decision making?
In
See, we just heard the governor of Tamil Nadu speak, and I think my takeaway from there is irrespective of whether you're talking democracy or you're talking autocracy, ultimately what matters is how strong is the leadership. If there is a strong leadership, there is clarity. And if there is clarity, you know which way you're heading. Okay, that's the leadership part. The other point, in fact, we have the benefit of having two sessions before us. I take from what Ashok Mehta was saying, then Ashok Mehta. I think that's also important. See, unless and until you have the capability, the numbers, of being the largest, armed forces and all is quite immaterial. And here, if you permit me to go back to what Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay said, that Swarajya without self-reliance is meaningless. And I think the most important thing that we are seeing now is the kind of emphasis that is being put on self-reliance for capability. And I think this is what will actually change the complexion of things, not in 1 day, not in 10 years, but certainly by 2047. And that is, I think, the theme of what we are studying today, on where do we see ourselves. I think, just to give you some, simple figures, we have already reduced our import from well over 70% to around 50-55% now. And it is just sliding down. On the contrary, if you see, we have started increasing our export capability phenomenally. From the highest importing country, we have former Secretary of Defense Production sitting here, we have now moved to become one of the within the top 25 countries that are exporting today. I'm not saying it's so substantially up the ladder yet, but definitely the fact that you have entered and you have multiplied your exports to about 5 times what it was 8 years back, this is a significant change and we are moving in that direction. Okay, the last one on this particular part, whether there is clarity. I mean, without clarity, can you achieve these figures that we are talking about? Without direction, can we be achieving these figures that we are talking about? Okay, now you take this last, very recent, which everybody has seen, the Deaf Expo that took place in Gandhinagar. You require some gum, let me tell you, not only in domestic politics, in international politics, to tell all foreign OEMs, foreign original equipment manufacturers, that you cannot set up stalls in India unless and until you have a joint venture or a subsidiary in India. It's a very strong step. So where is the doubt on clarity? Where is the doubt on the direction in which we are moving? So I think on that note, I will hand it back to you because I can see you.
Oh, what I was trying to stress on, that's why I went back to your military role, is since we've been going back into history 75 years, what I was trying to get at is, are you seeing a change in the way things are done? Because, there is no doubt that at present there is a sharpening of roles, there's a sharpening of policy. But in terms of if prioritization in national security, and we're talking of democratic polity, so we are supposed to be people who are part of that decision making. As a military, very senior military, did you have a role in contributing to national security decision making, where even if it's just defense?
Okay, so if you are, trying to drag me into what you keep hearing at various forums, that armed forces people are not there in the national security decision-making structure. I think, Tara, that is the farthest from the truth. Okay? And I'm not saying it particularly with A government or B government in the past. It is unimaginable to think that the National Security Council and I'm not talking about the Secretariat here, the National Security Council, the Cabinet Committee on Security, will be taking crucial decisions without inputs from the service chiefs.
Fair enough, fair.
So if you want me to, sort of reinforce what is commonly known, I am not getting into that trap because that is not the truth. Okay. And now if you see, again I go back to my point about capability, because in my mind, unless and until you have the right equipment, right capability, numbers don't matter. Who is the one who is announcing these repeated lists, of that we are not going to import hereafter? The figure has gone to 411. Let me tell you, Tara, this list may be announced by the minister, but it is being made by the office of the CDS, the Department of Military Affairs. Indeed, the first list was given by the previous CDS. So therefore, to think that decisions are being taken by putting the uniformed people in a different room, that's not the truth.
Okay, I would probably differ with you on that, but then we don't have time. Can I come to Ambassador Singh? In your capacity as in the Foreign Office, where you've served for many years, the same question, did you find a lacunae in national security direction? Because as we know, there is, in terms of how, say, for example, in Japan. Japan has now become such an important country in the Indo-Pacific, in our whole Indo-Pacific vision. So is it that we thought of this when Shinzo Abe was talking of the security diamond way back in 2017, and I know for a fact that it was never taken up. So would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Tara. Happy to be here. Thank you for the organizers. So very briefly, I think, let me begin with a broader issue. National security is there as a concept in India, even though we don't have a strategy, announced strategy. The United States has announced a new national security strategy. Germany and Japan are announcing strategies now. But most strategies are basically to tell behind who are you standing. Whereas if you want to maintain strategic autonomy, you need to have a diffuse national security strategy, which means don't enunciate it. And India doesn't enunciate strategies. Since 2018, when Prime Minister Modi went to the Shangri-La dialogue, we have not participated in that dialogue in a meaningful manner. Now that is where my problem comes when I was in MEA. With MOD, there is very poor coordination. If MEA's point of view was there, MOD should participate regularly in the Shangri-La dialogue, in the Jakarta International dialogue, in all these dialogues, whereas MOD normally prefers to be reticent. Perhaps it's a strategy that we will not enunciate our matters, but that was one area that I found of difficulty. But coming to Japan, when I went to Japan the first time in the early 80s, we wanted a relationship with Japan, which we have now. It took us a generation to get there because Japan did not take you seriously because of your economic ways. It's only when you provide economic opportunity that you are then taken seriously, and if you grasp that opportunity, you become a power. Now, with Japan, we are essentially using their partnership to enhance our economic power. We are the largest recipient of ODA from Japan, $4 billion a year, which converts into investment of $2 billion a year. So this is huge. This is what strengthens India's industry, competitiveness, merger and acquisitions capabilities, and the next step will be to go to an Atmanirbharta, which is based on supply chains and not stand alone. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity. This is not working. Yeah, I think
पॉलिटिशियन का चल रहा है.
Okay. Okay, in fact, I was just going to come to you. In terms of, what role does Parliament play in formulating a broad, okay, we don't have a national security policy, we don't have a, but what you, as I'm sure you know, he's won the award for the best parliamentarian. He's has an amazing record as a person in Parliament, which we unfortunately are not very used to. So here's someone who did his job in Parliament. So what is your view? What role should Parliament play in this process? Keeping in mind that he says, I will come to that in a minute, that the ministries are not always, what shall we say, they're not always up to speed when it comes to making a decision. And sometimes, despite what General Saha said, I would say the armed forces also don't have this.
Unless you want me to use my lung power. And yeah, that's one of the reasons, as MP, you really need a very huge lung power. And those who have not gone to the well of the house ever, and those who have not used their lung power, they'll end up getting the best parliamentarians award. नहीं अभी पहले तो General Pannu and Valley of Words, thank you so much for having invited me here. बहुत बार शादी ब्याह में क्या होता है कि रिसेप्शन होता है, बिगनिंग होती है, बहुत सारी चहल पहल होती है, उसके बाद घर वाले बच जाते हैं. तो मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि अब घर वाले बच गए, बाकी सबकी प्रायोरिटी लंच है. Obviously this is the lunch time. So who says that we do not have priority or strategy? Every one of us has priority and strategy. Having said that, in the serious note, I'm digressing a little from your question, which I'll come back as the politicians always do, confuse the audience and then come to the point. No, I mean, what do I talk about leadership? I have in front of me, जैसे कहा था ना, जब हम बैठे थे घरों में, आप झेल रहे थे गोली. And what do I talk in front of this kind of audience, if I may say so? मगर एक बात यह है कि we are all sort of been there, done that. I think it will make a lot of sense that such big, huge brain power also directs its entire strategy to the youth. And if I may suggest, in your next sessions, next year or whenever you have, you must call college students and the future. So as far as leadership is concerned, and that's what I think people look upon, and that's what Parliament is all about, leadership. And what is leadership? Leadership hai kya aakhir pe? A leader has to first understand himself or herself. Unless and until you understand yourself, I don't think so you can give leadership to anybody else. And that is what we are very happy and we are very proud and we are, I would say, we're very fortunate to be born in India. Because India is, what is India? India is all about knowledge. And we are in the era of knowledge. And that is why suddenly you find India all over. What is permanent is change. And what is certain is death. So right from the start, you understand that your time is limited. Here when we start any session, we think the time is unlimited, and that's what happens in Parliament also. When we start debating, we have 4 hours. तो जो पहले बोलते हैं वो तो बोलते ही जाते हैं. फिर आखिर वाले को बोलते हैं जल्दी करो बेल बजने लगती है. So सब जगह, I think the time has come where we have to take ourselves very seriously and also understand that others' time is also as valuable. So without discipline, you cannot have a serious nation. And that is what we are taught, spirituality also. Now, what is Krishna? I'm talking on leadership itself. What was Krishna? Was he a spiritual leader or was he a political leader? So when Duryodhana and Arjun, both of them went to Krishna. There's a long story which I'll cut down short. Arjuna asked that I want Krishna. And Duryodhan was happy that he wanted the army. Arjuna wanted Krishna because of strategy. And that is what the word I heard so many times, that it is the strategy. And I think what is permanent, what I said, is change, and a big, huge change has come to India as well. Swami Vivekananda we talk about. What's Swami Vivekananda? A nationalist Hindu. Wherever he went, a nationalist Hindu monk. Half work which was left behind by Swami Vivekananda. And I'm not talking Hindu as a religion, Hindu as knowledge. That half work which is left behind has again started, and I'll bring you back to an editorial in Washington Post on 16th of May. And what does the Washington Post say on 16th of May? Describing the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, that now a Hindu nationalist and an economic reformer has become the Prime Minister. Now, this is a very important thing, the leadership. Depends, when you talk about parliament, depends on the leadership, whether a leader is looking at his next election or he is looking at his next generation. And I'm very happy that suddenly we have recognized the identity of India. And suddenly we have recognized, and before India recognized, I personally feel the world recognized. And that is why these kind of editorials. So I personally feel that we are at a very interesting time. And there was a lot talk about what is a nation? What is Bharat? And this is the definition now. The world is realizing suddenly in the last 7 years, nothing great has happened in that sense of the word. But yes, we are going towards our identity. And as far as the parliament is concerned, security issues and all are definitely discussed. But does parliament at all give a direction in terms of making policies based on security? Yes and no, because we definitely discuss, and good points are taken from the opposition as well. But the basic things are definitely decided by the experts. And unless and until you have the opinions of the people in uniform who have been there, done that, there is no way we can form a national security policy. That's where the General Sahab said that people in uniform who have sacrificed their entire life, we take their input and decide what is good for the nation.
This is the okay. Thanks again for that short this thing. See, my question is, the problem is this. For example, the Standing Committee on Defence, which has, if you look at his reports, its veracity varies hugely. Some of them are spot on. Some of them is just blah. There was, in fact, I think one of the think tanks had tried a program to get parliamentarians to understand national security. They brought in themes. This was quite, I forget who it was. It failed miserably. Nobody wanted to know. What would you suggest is a way? Because I believe parliamentarians are extremely intelligent people. After all, they've got there. How do we get them to understand more to want to know more, put it that way, and thereby take the decision making forward?
See, as far as I had been in the Standing Committee of Defense, and I can tell you with all humility, we know nothing about it. And there is no way we should know the deeper sense of security. Because there are certain things in a transparent democracy, when we discuss openly. Now, national security not a subject of discussion in a conference. National security is very, very close to yourself. And unless and until you know what it is, there is a committee of Parliament, not Parliament, sorry, of Cabinet Committee on National Security. Maybe certain things are discussed there, but these are absolutely closed-door strategies, and I'm glad that we draw a line and not go beyond that line.
Can we start Atmanirbhar with microphones? The one interesting thing I found, in terms of strong leadership, this vision we have, I just mentioned it. There is a theory that a leader who is not absolutely a kind of a very dominant personality gets less inputs from his colleagues than otherwise. I remember the Vajpayee government, for instance. I mean, that was an amazing experience because everybody was brought on board, including opposition leaders, and people were not scared to say what they thought because, I mean, that's just a thought. But coming back to the question to Mr. Rao, you've heard Ambassador Gurjit saying that the MOD should be present more in this, which I entirely agree. The MOD needs, in the years that I've been there, again, it's not just the parliamentarians who seem to lack speciality. I don't expect a parliamentarian to know, the ins and outs of, say, what is the budget and what is this thing. But I do expect it from a ministry official. And often, I mean, it is a fact that some ministries don't always come to scratch because bureaucrats, it's not their fault. They're not given that kind of specialization either. So someone comes from, say, agriculture and comes into the Ministry of Defense. How can you expect that extremely intelligent person to pick up? So how do you think this should be dealt with? Because it's so important. Because you're bringing this whole, number of people together to get a decision out on file.
Thank you, madam, and I thank Chopra and General Parminder for having invited me to be. Is this working? Yes. Yeah. First thing I want to ask about strategy is, when I came in the morning, I was feeling very confident, saying that there is no threat to India. But after I heard all these things in the first session, I started feeling insecure. Suddenly, people have put a lot of fear of God into me, saying that, "Yaar, China itna aage chala gaya." Because I was so happy that you would have read in the papers now that the Russians are plucking out the chips from washing machines and using in munition. China. The Russians in Ukraine war, they're plucking out chips from the washing machines. There's such a severe shortage of chips. And they say, unless China takes over Taiwan fully, they will not have access to chips. And without access to silicon chips, the next wars are not there. I mean, I was very confident about it. There's a very good book on the market by Chris Miller. It says Chip War. And there was a very good book review about it 2 weeks ago in Business Standard. I just went through it because I'm an electronics engineer and I'm an industrial engineer also. So having said that, let us be very clear. China is nowhere near in terms of electronic capability. If that is going to decide war, fine. I mean, we are safe. Because the power of mechanical engineering laced with chemical engineering is tested out in Ukraine. It's not paying dividends. They're firing 20 times the numbers required of guided munitions in Ukraine with diminishing returns. So I was feeling very secure. Till I heard the first session, then suddenly I started feeling insecure. Having said that, we keep on Sanskritizing names, giving future goalposts, Atmanirbhar, and what is it, 47? Some number, some phrase again will come, highly Sanskritized. I as industrial engineer, I always ask, where are we in manufacturing? I ask one fundamental question. Why is it that in all the middle class and elite homes, the women only use imported hair dryers? Why is it that they don't use domestic hair dryers? I ask this question to my wife and everyone. The great Indian woman doesn't trust her wet hair to an Indian motor connected to electricity, period. That is where we are in engineering. First of all, let us convince our women that Indian hair dryer is good enough. Then I will talk about Atmanirbhar. We'll go that far. Now, having said that, in the world of technology, we made good strides in the world of IT. They're also not very much up the value chain, But in terms of manufacturing, we're hopelessly in pits. How many thousand varieties of steel are required to make good equipment? And how many varieties do we make in this country? Do you have an idea? Do you have material to make a turbine blade of an aircraft? 16 hours of flight from Heathrow to New York, let us say. And it should not, there should be no deformity in that turbine blade. We don't know that material. I know that the research which was going on into the making of the turbine blade was halted somewhere down the line. I will not take names now. Let's get into the basics. To start with Atmanirbhar, we must have sound engineering. Yes, we've done good strides in IT, but in mechanical engineering, we're way behind. We are very poor in materials indeed. The country which is very poor, very good in materials is not good in electronics part. That is Russia. Russians really know how to make all materials under the sun. Their metallurgical skills are superb. But their electronics is way behind. So we have a very long way to go. And in terms of building consensus, madam, security, defining security, security concerns should not be left to one long building called South Block. That's my considered opinion. Only one long building called South Block. If you think that all wisdom is resident there, we're mistaken. First thing is we should come out of the closet, bring humility. I always ask this question in Ministry of Defense. Why is it that the Honorable Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and the Home Minister don't call these chief ministers of at least the border states and give them a briefing once in a year? I mean, don't the chief ministers of Bihar, UP, Bengal, and Punjab, and others, Rajasthan, don't they deserve the respect of being called and spoken to, saying that these are the security concerns? I always thought, if I want to make a landing ground in Arunachal Pradesh, land acquisition is an issue. Can't we have a constitutional amendment and promulgate an act saying that all along the border, a 2-kilometer width ribbon shall rest with the armed forces? It requires a constitutional amendment, an act, which should be passed in all those states. You can get it done if you take those chief ministers into confidence. If you don't care for them ever, and incidentally, our chief ministers are very powerful in their own way. The CM of Bihar may have 17 members of parliament in the parliament, and so is the CM of Bengal. Their representatives are here. The CM of UP, they're respectable people. You need their support. You need their support to have a simple act saying that, yes, we all shall surrender 2 kilometers of land all along the border in favor of the nation so that you can take decisions. But that requires humility from this side to call them, to take them into confidence and brief them. So security is not one person's alone. It's not the prerogative of South Block alone. If you can come out of that mindset, we'll go a long way. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent. I think both your organization should really make note of that suggestion. I think it's though you did not answer my question. I'm still wondering because you see, this is something which we've faced. Okay, I'm going to tell you a secret, but I'm not going to tell you who said it. A very very senior person in government, very senior, once asked us. He says, "Why are we in Afghanistan? We should pull out. You know, here is this whole government sitting down trying to work out a strategy." And he said, "Yahan kya karna hai? Yahan to kuch kahi nahi." So you know that it is not, that person is not stupid. They are intelligent in their own right. So how do we get bureaucrats to understand what are our priorities at a given time? And then they are bareback. Anyway, we can pass. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to throw the question open to the audience now. But let all of us, sort of come together and ask questions, not just. Please feel free. Anybody, not you, General Mehta. Wait, I'll keep you for the... Anybody else who has a question to any of the panelists? Yes, please, from there. General Mehta, I will come back to you. Just give me, because you already spoke on a panel, no? So let's give others a chance.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this excellent overview. I'm Commodore A.J. Singh. I'm the Vice President of the Indian Maritime Foundation. I have a question to Mr. Gurjit Singh. So you mentioned that a country following a foreign policy of strategic autonomy need not, or perhaps chooses not to enunciate its strategy, but it has one nevertheless. We've always heard that India has never articulated a national security strategy. We assume that there must be some strategy somewhere which drives the government's actions, whether it be foreign policy actions, security actions, and a combined sort of effort. Then why is it that you made a statement saying that you're not sure why the MOD doesn't do what it's doing, and the MOD perhaps feels likewise if they were asked about the MEA? If we do have a strategy, if these two most important ministries dealing with an external security strategy are not seeing eye to eye, or not exactly clear on what each one of them is doing, how will we ever be able to harness our comprehensive national power? How will we ever be able to achieve an all-of-government approach towards addressing our national security concerns? So I would rather say this is more strategic ambiguity than strategic autonomy.
Yeah, one there, please.
I think the point that I want to make is this. So who is making the decisions now? If I go by what you are suggesting and all the questions that you have asked to various participants, then who is really making the decisions? PM himself? The Ministry of External Affairs is not doing, there is no coordination, as my friend, Gurjit Singh, Ambassador Gurjit Singh said. But I think we have got a cabinet committee on security which takes the ultimate decisions. On the one hand, we harp on that there is no coordination. The fact remains that the foreign minister is there, the defense minister is there. So if the defense minister and foreign minister who head their respective ministries are there, to harp on this point, there is no coordination, then who the hell takes this decision for the government of India? Who is IS officer? It is very easy to blame the bureaucrats. But then who are those bureaucrats? Where are they posted? So I think that is a very simplistic question, though the fact remains that there has to be a better coordination. The second point about that parliament thing, I think I'll make two more points, very brief. I'll be very brief. I'm a media person. I know I have to be brief. The whole point is this. You see your own constitution. You see, unlike in the US, unlike in Britain, the important foreign policy decisions are approved by their respective parliaments. The important security considerations are not discussed. Your ambassadors are appointed when your parliament approves them. So you do not have these provisions here in this country. So there was a time, I think Indira Gandhi was heard saying that strategic decisions are not to be done here, it is few people. The third point, everybody, sir, you made this point in the border areas. There has to be some political consensus. Unfortunately, the way the Indian politics is, no chief minister, you are talking of Bihar, you are talking of Mamata Banerjee, not an inch of territory they will give. They will be saying farmers, inka itna naukri chala jayega, inka pesa chala jayega. In this sort of fractured democracy, to have that sort of consensus is not possible.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I'll take one last question. Yeah, please. Can you, sorry, you'll have to keep it really short.
Yeah, my question is not on processes which you are discussing. I know processes are important, but would the panel like to give a view with the growing geo-fragmentation which is now occurring, and suppose there's a flashpoint on Taiwan, what are India's cards? Like, would India need to go in one camp or the other, or would you advise India to stay distant on it and try to work out solution?
Okay, Mr. Trivedi, please could you go?
So we start from Taiwan, right? And I'm glad that you brought up Taiwan, because I was just going to mention and ask that if somebody asked me that which is the most powerful country in the world, people may say USA, but I think Taiwan is the most powerful country in the world. 90% of the high-end chip is made in Taiwan. And what Taiwan makes, Intel cannot make it in USA. And again, that is a strategy thing that Mr. Maurice Chang, who was a little, I'll take a little 5 minutes more, otherwise I won't be able to give a straightforward answer. The strategy was that if Maurice Chang would have been made the CEO of Texas Instrument, then he would never have gone to Taiwan and became the founder member of this great chip manufacturing company. 90% of the chip, if it comes from Taiwan, and all your iPhones and all your other things, the moment Taiwan shuts down, which I'm sure it will never shut down, everything gets shut down. Your aeroplanes will not fly. 90%. And how many transistors we have in our iPhone? 8 to 10 billion. So now, data is no more a new oil. It is the process is the new oil. You may have all the data of the world, but if your process is not accurate and fast enough, then your data is all useless. So Taiwan has emerged as #1 powerful country in the world. And I bet you neither China nor America, nobody can touch Taiwan. Nobody can touch Taiwan. And that is where you look at our foreign policy now, when a lot of things were talked about. The taste of the pudding is in the eating. Who could have ever thought that both Russia and Ukraine will stop their war for Indian students to come out? I don't think so. I would have ever thought that India would become so important. I don't use the word powerful. India is strategically so very important for whatever be the reason, because you have a strong leader and the world likes to deal with a strong leader. And a strong leader has a vision. So what is the difference between a leader and an engineer? An engineer will say that I'm building this road. The leader will give you a direction that in which direction you want to build the road. So I think we are fortunate to have this strong leadership. People may like, people may not like. And I'll just give you last example that the test of the leadership is where, and what Mr. Rao said, some of it I totally agree with him. But the fact is, during COVID time, the world leaderships were under test. And I know so many television channels. When oxygen was in short supply, we became warmongers. That gone, finished, everybody is going to be dead. But what did the government do? And I know it for sure. First-hand information. Government did not bother as what people are saying. They just put their head down, did not blame anybody, and made sure that how do we augment the oxygen supply. And did whatever was required to be done. And where the world was trying to prioritize vaccine for their own citizen, we gave vaccines to the world and we started manufacturing ourselves. So what I'm trying to say that, yes, I agree with Mr. Rao that India has started little late. So strategically, we should have started. And now I'm not on politics. The fact of life is, jab se jage tab se subah. That's what it is. And this is where now we have woken up and we have realized our strength. Most of the CEOs of the world are of Indian origin. And if I get a chance, I'll come back again on it. Lastly, if we really want to build India, make sure your talent is respected. But you can clap more, there is no GST on that.
Yes. So I'm now going to address what you said, sir, and what Prakash said. I'm sorry if I gave you the impression that the ministries were uncoordinated. That was not what I said. What I said was that our priorities are not sometimes the same. Now, going to the Shangri-La dialogue is not a policy issue. It doesn't have that much coordination. I believe that MOD needs to speak up more internationally rather than only MEA. Hope I'm clear. And that I think they don't do. Now, rest I fully agree with Mr. Rao that all decision making need not be confined. And I think like MEA needs outside assistance, MOD does too. Now, I can give you a firm example how the lack of coordination, and this is to answer Prakash, where is decision making made? When I was the head of Africa, I knew that we have huge investments in Mozambique, which is our new coal and gas supplier. What provisions have we made to protect those sea lanes? We were working with Mauritius and Seychelles, and we got these ideas of assumption and agalega, which today are in the public domain, but were top secret at that time, only because the Navy and MEA worked together. The MOD was dead set against it. The funding of those bases originally came from Africa division budget. Large numbers, including the entire Dornier fleets, the pilots, the coastal radar, everything came as grant aid. So there was a lack of coordination, but there was ultimately a decision because then each ministry goes to the Cabinet Committee on Security. I was there, I have seen a decision come from the MOD, from the MEA, Finance Ministry, and then the Prime Minister takes a call. That is how decisions are made. Now, some decisions in MEA we won, in some decisions we lost. But I do not want to conclude without saying this. In the earlier session, Sandeep Onithan raised the right point. We pay insufficient attention to the ocean. We are caught between those lines. He has explained modern warfare doesn't recognize lines. Today it is chips, it is supply chains, it is your vaccine, it is your soft power. This is what makes you friends. You don't have to make everything in India. You just have to make sure you have reliable friends with whom you can have a supply chain. That is what, and China is not a reliable friend. And yet we depend on them. Now you call this a national strategy, sir? I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap up this session. I think we had a very interesting conversation, but to guess, somebody had asked this thing. See, what we keep talking about coordination is just what Ambassador explained so
Last sentence.
Yeah, please.
I mean, a lot has been spoken about this warfare and then strategy. Why is it that in the national security perspective, nobody has spoken about manufactured epidemics which are unleashed across the borders? I mean, you've been the biggest victim of it, COVID. So, I mean, in fact, from the morning I've been waiting whether somebody will ever mention in the passing whether lab manufactured epidemics can also be tackled, can you have a strategy on it, how to face it. I think it's only a food for thought before you go for lunch. Just reflect on it.
Okay, before you eat it, there is actually, anyway, that doesn't matter. So, coordination is everything. And that is, we have an amazing, strong leadership. He deserves the best. If he deserves the best, he needs more coordination. Because as we said, the threats are so diffused. What you're likely to need is not just your armed forces fighting. You need a whole range from chips to advice on biosecurity. It's so immense that unless ministries coordinate, you're not going to get where you are. I think that's the bottom line. Thank you all. Thank you for my panelists. Thank you to both.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tara.
Chopra, come over. So, in the photograph, you are also there.
Thank you, Dr. Tara, for that very, very invigorating and interesting discussion.
You both were not there.
I believe it was